"You can't live here." That's the first thing I heard screamed in my face while I was standing in my own driveway holding the last moving box of my life. I'd just spent 300 grand on this house, drained every ounce of my savings, and this woman, this stranger, was claiming my new home belonged to her HOA. The kicker, she rattled off my work schedule, the time my wife got off her night shifts, even the exact coffee shop she stopped at on the way home. That's when the chill hit me. This wasn't just a nosy neighbor, this was someone who had been watching us. I should back up. My name's Ethan Miller. I'm a project manager at Morrison Construction, been there 8 years. My wife Lena is a night shift nurse at General Hospital. We'd been saving for what felt like forever to buy a house we could finally call ours. When we closed on this beautiful colonial on Maple Street in Willow Creek, it felt like a dream. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a massive oak tree out front, it was perfect. I remember thinking this was the place we'd start our family, maybe hang a swing under that oak. I never imagined it would become ground zero for the worst nightmare of my life. The first time I saw her, she just marched up the driveway like she owned it. Blonde bob haircut. White polo shirt tucked into khaki pants, the human embodiment of a country club complaint form. She had this voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Excuse me, you can't live here. This house belongs to HOA property." I literally froze, box still in my arms, wondering if I'd fallen into some prank show. But she wasn't joking. She smirked and started listing off my personal details like she was reading from my diary. Morrison Construction 7. 15 a.m. Sharp. Lena gets home around 7:30, stops for coffee on Elm. How did she know this? We hadn't even lived there yet, just visited during inspections. Then she gestured to my Honda like she'd been keeping a log. "That car's been here 3 times this past month," she said proudly. My hands started shaking. Then, as if on cue, 3 more people appeared, clipboards in hand, flanking her like she was their general. One was her husband Greg, sweating bullets but playing along. She flashed a boundary survey that looked off just enough to make me question myself for a second. And then she said it. "I've already contacted your employer about your behavior." My phone buzzed in my pocket, an email from my boss asking about complaints from the neighborhood. That's when I realized this wasn't some eccentric neighbor. This was calculated. She wasn't just watching me, she was already sabotaging me. That night, bringing in the mail, I looked up at the oak tree. There it was. A camera mounted high pointed right at my driveway. I swear it hadn't been there during any of our visits. I felt sick. Valerie Shaw, that's her name, hadn't just been watching us, she'd been preparing for war. And 3 days later, she escalated. I turned onto Maple Street and almost crashed my car. A moving truck sat in my driveway, blocking my garage. Movers were carrying her furniture into my house. Into my house? Valerie stood at the door, waving papers in the air like some twisted orchestra conductor. "This house belongs to my late mother-in-law, Ruth's estate," she announced to the gathering neighbors. "My husband was scammed by fraudulent sellers. I'm reclaiming family property." I lost it. I sprinted across the yard, shouting at the movers to stop. They froze, looking between me and Valerie like they'd walked into a sitcom gone wrong. She slammed her so-called documents onto the hood of the truck, spreading pages like evidence at a trial. I planted myself in the doorway, arms wide. "This is my house," I yelled, "and she is trespassing with fake documents." Valerie screamed back, "You're trespassing on my property." The irony almost made me laugh if I wasn't so furious. Neighbors crowded around, whispering, pointing. Some of them actually looked like they believed her. When the police finally arrived, they skimmed both sets of papers side and said, "If you want to fight this, do it in court. On its face, his deed looks proper." They ordered her movers to leave. Valerie's face twisted into pure rage, the kind you only see when someone realizes the world won't bend to their will. But the damage was done. That night, checking the mailbox again, I found something that made my stomach drop. A spare key jammed into the back slot. Not mine, not from the sellers, which meant only one thing: at some point Valerie had copied a key. The thought that she might have already been inside while Lena and I were gone. I couldn't sleep. I started to unravel. I was exhausted, paranoid, doubting myself. Lena was making mistakes at work because the stress was breaking her down. I even considered giving up selling the house, cutting our losses, walking away from this nightmare. For a moment, I believed maybe she'd win. Maybe I couldn't fight someone this obsessed, this prepared. Then Robert Miller knocked on my door. He's a retired accountant, lives 3 houses down. Quiet, meticulous. He sat at my kitchen table with a manila envelope and told me he'd been watching too, not me, but Valerie and Greg. Inside that envelope were photos of Greg at a coffee shop practicing signatures, bank records showing payments to document preparation services, even text messages between Greg and Valerie about their inheritance recovery project. The pieces clicked. Greg wasn't just Valerie's sidekick. He was the one forging documents, creating fake wills, building this fraud from the ground up. And suddenly, I wasn't powerless anymore. I had proof. We gathered everything: Robert's photos, Lena's testimony about the stress my deed, even handwriting samples. Aaron Walsh, my attorney, dug into county records and uncovered the real will of Ruth, the supposed source of all this drama. And guess what? Ruth had specifically excluded Valerie and Greg from inheriting anything. Called them financially irresponsible and manipulative. Every single document Valerie had waved around was fabricated. When Valerie filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I'd threatened her family, I almost laughed. Sitting in that courtroom, watching her put on an Oscar-worthy performance about being harassed by a dangerous neighbor, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. Then Aaron rolled out our evidence. The handwriting expert testified. The county clerk confirmed the real will. And then Aaron played the recordings, Valerie's edited tapes, alongside the originals. The difference was devastating. The judge's face shifted from skeptical to horrified as the truth unraveled. And that's when Valerie snapped. She stood up, pointing at me, screaming, "This is corruption! You're stealing from Christian families. You're destroying America." The bailiff had to restrain her as she ranted about conspiracies. Her meltdown was so unhinged, people in the hallway could hear her. Police searched her house the next day. What they found made my situation look small. Files on dozens of families, surveillance notes, forged documents, even payment records to corrupt officials. This wasn't just about me. Valerie had been running a fraud operation for years. Greg, cornered by evidence, turned on her instantly once he realized she planned to pin it all on his gambling debts. The morning they arrested her, I stood across the street watching from an unmarked car. Valerie was hosting a neighborhood security meeting in her living room, really a recruitment pitch for more victims. Officers walked in with warrants. Her confident smile crumbled into panic. She bolted for the back door and was tackled in her own yard, screaming about persecution as the cuffs clicked shut. That was the moment the nightmare ended. Here's what I learned: bullies thrive on intimidation, but the second you stand your ground and shine light on their lies, their power collapses.